It is Tuesday, the 18th of November 2025, and it's cold. I'd say it's around 9 degrees centigrade here in Ireland. I'm in the workshop. I have a heater here. I just can't put it on when I'm making a video. It's too loud. So you wouldn't really stay too long out here in the cold, although some people might. Anyway, it's not raining. That's the big thing. Now, I want to do a number of videos today, bring you up to speed with some things, and it's remarked by many bloggers, or whatever you call us, vloggers, is it, people like me, that the rate of news is coming in is unbelievable. Things are changing at an unbelievable speed in the world. Now, I want to deal here with the Ukraine situation and what's going on. Now, a lot of people are wondering why the West is funneling money into Ukraine, and there is no logical explanation for what's going on. The whole economies are all broke. I think it's my prayers that the EU will be destroyed. I supported the EU, but once they dirtied their copy and failed to keep their treaties with me, they were out and no go back. And I think I'm going to see the day when the Ukraine will totally collapse. I know a lot of my supporters here will not agree with me. I have to be truthful. That's the truth of my mind. And I think it's my prayers being answered. It took something big to pull the European Union down. Now, there's a number of things. Zelensky is on a tour. And while he's on the tour of Europe, the war is being lost big time. Pokrovsk, that's a huge important town. The Russians are well on their way to the Dnieper River, which is a bit like the River Shannon here in Ireland. Very strategic approach when they get to the Dnieper River. They're also making progress in the south and cutting off troops. Thousands of troops being cut off. Troops are surrendering and everything else. Now, so he's not there. His foreign minister, his name is Romarov. He's away in Turkey on a prisoner exchange debate, trying to get the Russians to exchange prisoners. And it's not going too well there either for him. And some other high-ranking officials in Ukraine appear to have fled. Anyway, Zelensky was in Greece, and he did some kind of a deal to get American gas to Ukraine, which I cannot understand, and there'll always be these things someone might post underneath here. Why would the Ukraine, that has plenty of gas, and it cut off the supply of gas to Hungary and Czechoslovakia, and Slovakia, sorry, why would the Ukraine be trying to get gas? It doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, it's just another part of the puzzle. Nothing makes sense. Now, Macron, he's going to meet Macron. Oh, Macron. Oh, Ukraine. They didn't get the jewels that were stolen out of the Louvre Museum in Paris. No, didn't get them. But another thing that people don't know. There is a campaigner against drug abuse in France. A campaigner against the drug cartels in France. France is awash with drug gangs. There's neither law nor order in France. And this chap had his brother killed, and his second brother was shot the day before yesterday, dead, sitting in his car. So the criminals are taking over France, like they're taking over Mexico. And sometimes people criticize me for supporting Trump. At least Trump is trying to hammer them. Mexico is a narco state, they call it, a drug state. At least there's a fight back. There's no fight back in France. France is fighting the Russians when its own people are being murdered for opposing drugs. Okay? Now, so the Ukraine is now moving to conscript people under the age of 25 and take children off the street. Now, we know that at some stage on Zelensky's visit, he's almost certainly going to meet and give a big hug to Sir Keir Starmer, who's on the way out in Britain. I prophesied before, he can't last. He's just too big of an idiot to last. He's also meeting the Norwegian Prime Minister. And the Norwegian Prime Minister has a wealth fund where the money from the oil and that is saved up. And it's saved up for pensions and for a rainy day when the oil might run out or there might be a hard time in Norway and Zelensky's going over with the cap out. Please give me all your wealth fund. So the pensions of Germany are already gone. The pensions of France are already gone. And the pensions of Britain will be going to Ukraine. But now the Norwegians, who are not members of the EU, will be given, well, they didn't decide it yet, that has to be said. But the hand is going to be out for the money. Now, it's cannibalising. It has been described by the cannibalisation of the European savings. Now, the position with the Belgium Euroclear bank is Euroclear is a massive bank. There's 150 billion there owned by Russia, and there's more money owned by Russia all around Europe. It was never done to seize money of other countries. It was safe in banks. Now, the Belgian Prime Minister has said he does not favour raiding the money, stealing Russia's money and giving it to Ukraine. But the pressure is on from Ursula von der Leyen to do it. But the Euro Bank itself has come out and said if they go to steal the money and force them to give over the money, it will go to court. It will go to the highest court. Because if the bank starts giving other people's money away, suppose now I had a bit of money in the bank to buy a few cattle, I want to buy 2 cows, and to take it off me, well, I can't buy my 2 cows. I think most people understand that. Well, that's what they're trying to do. So I think at this stage, von der Leyen and the European Commission, which I want to see destroyed, and I want to see them charged and investigated for their crimes, particularly in relation to the COVID vaccine. But she may be beginning to realise that it's not going to be enough to persuade the Belgian government to give the money to Zelensky. They're going to have to persuade a court because the bank, the Euroclear, will go to court. And by going to court, the Euroclear bank will show to the world that it's not given up without a fight. And that's very important. It's not just going to sit idly by. So that is the pathetic situation, but the only explanation for it is that it's my prayers being answered, and I love it except for the deaths of the young Ukrainians. Now, there's corruption in Ukraine, 150 million, which wouldn't buy a cup of coffee for Zelensky, but it's been fiddled, and there's an investigation in Ukraine into it. I'm not quite sure why Zelensky didn't shoot the investigators. That is a bit of a mystery, because he's a dictator. But there is an investigation and an admission that there's 150 million of this money gone. My own suspicion is that's only at the tip of the iceberg. It may be that somebody outside of Zelensky's circle has stolen this money and he wants them exposed. Well, what about himself? And what about all the weapons? Now, he had a gold toilet. It's supposed to be him, a gold toilet. So go on. I'll tell you. And that's the track of a dictator. They get all this grandiose ideas. Go like Mugabe with a big house in Zimbabwe and everyone else starving. And there's talks about bags of cash moving all over the Ukraine. Now, there are Ukrainians in Ireland and they should drop a line, Val Martin, Kingscourt, Ireland, and I'd meet one of them and discuss it. I'd love to have some way of finding out more about Ukraine. Now, that's the situation in Europe. And Friedrich Mertz, the German Chancellor, and the German government, the French government, the British government, they couldn't get enough of migrants. And their excuse for the migrants was that the migrants were fleeing war. And we had to be compassionate, when in fact a lot of them were jihadis. The Syrian law and order broke down, and President Trump, in my opinion, deserving credit for it, has got a settlement there with the jihadi lad that's in charge of it. He's in charge, that's the situation, and Trump spoke to him. I don't really see anything wrong with that. He tried to protect Christians and other non-Muslims and that in the area, and I think that's to be applauded. If that is true, I'd be giving him the Peace Prize more for that than anything else. But whether he did or not, the point is, Mertz wants the young Ukrainian men forced back. First of all, Zelensky wants to conscript. The present rules is that you have to be 25 to be conscripted. But Zelensky wants to conscript them from 18. But Mertz has given out about young lads fleeing the Ukraine to get away from the death that tramp, Zelensky, a dirty tramp, to get away from him. And what is Germany's response? And indeed the Poles are at it too. These are the villains that tell us we have to be compassionate to people from abroad. They wouldn't let RCB, be a Catholic woman, be sentenced to death in Pakistan, into Ireland. We have to be compassionate for refugees. And yet when young Ukrainian men try to flee the war and come to Germany, they want them horsed and forced back. They want them forced back. Sorry about the bit of vapour on my breath. It's just a bit chilly here and I can't turn on the heater. It's not that I'm sitting out in the cold, it's just to make this video. Now you look at the double standard. They never give a damn why the migrants were coming into Europe. There come 1,000 Syrians in. And now they want to send them back, and they won't go back because they get the dole. And they will not cut the dole. I'm all for letting a young Ukrainian man get out of the battle zone and give him enough to live on, and a few cigarettes or a cup of coffee, and let him spend out the war. That happened before in European history, and I'll do another video on that at some time. But they can't bring themselves to change the rules on the giving out of welfare. The same welfare is given to a fella that arrives here from Zimbabwe today as a man that lived here all his life and born here. Why is that the way? That's not incidental. That's because the Western governments are out to destroy our way of life. We have a Muslim first generation in New York elected mayor, all by the illegal votes of immigrants that are only in a couple of weeks and months. Set out to destroy New York, and the same is after happening in Seattle. So Mertz, Starmer and Macron, they're all part of the deliberate destruction of Europe. They say, oh, we couldn't send them back. Isn't Trump doing it? Isn't Trump sending them back? And only for Trump got elected, that'd be their excuse. It's not physically possible. It's perfectly physically possible. I wouldn't be a month in running the country till they'd be got rid of every single one. And our government has signed a European pact that we have to either take the migrants in here or pay 20,000 for everyone we leave in Italy and southern Europe. It's their problem. It's up to them to face the music. Sharing it with us, why should we take it on? Anyway, the bad news is with these villains. I think I've dealt with Europe now. I think I've made it clear the crowd of villains they are. They talk about democracy, and they won't let the Alternative for Iceland take part in government, and they're about close to being the second biggest party, if not the biggest party in Germany. But the enormity of the destruction with the migration and the war is so unbelievable that even they are forced to move because the thing won't last. Won't last. This could have been settled with Russia years ago. Now, unfortunately, the Bowl Donald, I'm not sure if he's not throwing a wobbly. There's a lot of evidence now that he's going to join in and support Ukraine with money. And I hear now that he was here to blame Ukraine for United States inflation. They're blaming Russia for inflation. And that's what you're going to see in Ireland and in Britain and in Europe. Oh, Putin's responsible for our money printing. So we'll see what happens there. But there is evidence that Trump is breaking his promise not to get involved in wars, and we'll watch him on that one. They can't help funneling money. They can't help. And Trump is now talking about what virtually amounts to an embargo. He's going to impose such stiff sanctions on any country that does business with Russia that it involves a trade embargo. It would nearly have to be enforced by US ships. And an investigation I did, and I published videos here, suggest that one of the biggest consumers of Russian fuel is the European Union. That's a fact. So it'll be very interesting to see if Trump's embargo will apply to the EU. I have a sneaking suspicion that what Trump is actually doing is he's saying to the EU, oh, we'll put an embargo now on this Russian. I'm a great fella. But he knows that they'll be the first to be hit. That could be the devilment he's up to. I wouldn't put it past him. He thinks like me, and that's what I'd be doing if I was in there. Anyway, that's the story. Hopefully the EU will break, it'll be destroyed. But anyway, we'll have a bit of fun while it's happening. If anyone is from Ukraine here wants to contact me, I will speak to them. But get and advise all the men get out of Ukraine. I believe that Zelensky was forced to remove the barrier on people leaving. The Ukraine forces are not legitimate, and they're mostly Nazis. They're not legitimate. Ukrainian soldiers and police have no business to come up to anyone's house and take their children. And I believe, if it were me, and I don't want to be propagating any type of insurrection, I would tackle and take on my own country's rogue forces. Zelensky should be got out. They can't get him out. The dirty tramp. He's a dirty tramp. And that Starmer's nothing better. That's my view on it. And I've looked him up big time. Dirty, dirty villain. That's all he is. And the death he has caused, and the stinking bodies lying over the Ukraine, when this could all have been settled. Don't have any doubt about it, folks. Any doubt. What happened here was, when Gorbachev was running Russia, they went over and told him they would not surround Russia with NATO. They told him they'd leave him be. They could have had trade, oil, gas, fertilizer, great trade, grain and everything. They could have had all that from Russia. Russia could have been guided along and even maybe made some type of an associate member of the European Union. It could have been done. But no, they tried to take Georgia away. Victoria Nuland went over and tried to create a colour revolution in Georgia. And the egots in Ireland would shout, oh, isn't that lovely now? Nice rainbow flag, oh yeah, oh God, that's great. The dirty villains. They were trying to surround Russia with a nuclear military force. They'd have done it in Belarus if they could. They tried it everywhere else. And they did it in Ukraine with the specific purpose of destabilizing Russia, grabbing all the resources of the Ukraine, getting it into the EU and making money for Europe, and bringing Putin's government down in the process. And anyone that knew anything about history should know that from Napoleon Bonaparte to Adolf Hitler, when you poke the Russian bear, they'll join ranks. I'd say if Putin went for election in Russia at the minute, he'd get a 90% approval. And why are they always the black man? Why are they always cast aside? Why are they always the wrong one, the evil one? They're Christian people like us. If you're in Moscow and you can't find a Catholic church, you can go in and receive Holy Communion in the Eastern Orthodox Church, according to Catholic law, that, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong. Are we up to date? I think my videos are having an effect. I see politicians every day forced to come out and justify things they'd never normally do. But there are a few others as well on here. I think the public are being very well informed by alternative media. Very good, folks. That's the story. Let's get them youngsters out of Ukraine. Give them €50 a week and a bit teeth, bit of old Irish stew. No passports, nothing else. When the war is over, they can go back. But just imagine this. The whole tenure, the whole news from Germany over the years with Angela Merkel was we have to be nice to the victims of war, particularly if they're big jihadi Muslims, Islamic terrorists. We have to bring them in. The destruction and crime they've wrought in Sweden and Germany is immeasurable, and in France. But when it comes to bringing in a few young Ukrainian men that don't want to be put into the meat grinder, God help them. Oh no, we'll send them back. Does that not prove my case as a farmer with cows? Good luck, folks. Comment underneath. Very proud of that video. Go up now. Bye bye. Thank you.